Hello guys, happy Friday. So I'm here to do some live fun. Um, we're going to be talking about setting realistic goals and a little bit about why slow progress isn't necessarily bad progress. I'm kind of just going to ramble for a little bit until I see some people pop on. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Alexa. I've been a coach here at WAG for 2.5 years. That's so crazy. um, I live up in Rochester, New York, kind of near Ontario Lake, near Canada almost. We're like an hour from Canada. I'm a competitive weightlifter, and I compete for fun and competitively in the 59 kilo class, newly 59 kilo class. So I'm just gonna dive in here. If my dogs bark at any time, please forgive me. I have 3. So there's a very large chance that they will bark. But so I'm just gonna pull up my notes here if you guys see me looking, just making sure I don't forget anything. But I'm really excited to be talking about this topic today, guys, because this is something that is super useful for anyone on the program, both new clients and people who have been here for months and maybe years. So I'm just going to dive in. So I'm going to start off with why slow progress isn't necessarily bad. We'll get into setting realistic goals a little bit later. I have a fun little acronym for you guys. But just to start things off, when thinking about slow progress, obviously I know that's super frustrating, and we can all agree that like we've probably been there, and it sucks to feel like we're not moving in the right direction. But I think oftentimes when we're pushing towards something awesome and new, that we can get a little bit impatient and greedy. And that's totally normal and it's totally okay. But I think we can just get too caught up with the outcome and forget that there are so many little micro steps and goals that we need to take to get to that end goal, especially in terms of creating a realistic and sustainable lifestyle for ourselves. But the ironic thing about this is that we didn't get here overnight. Obviously, we know it may have taken years and years of habitual behavior, maybe some bad habits, to get us to where we are right now. But the most important thing to remember is that it might take a little bit longer than we want to get from point A to point B. And that's okay, because for the majority of us, we signed up for WAG to change our life, right? I mean, that's pretty much why all of us are here. No matter what your goal is, we're hopefully changing lives. So going back to this slow progress topic, there's a statistic about dieting that really strikes a chord with me, and I just wanted to share it with you all because it just kind of pertains to why slow progress isn't necessarily bad. So here it is. Studies show that 80% of people who successfully diet or lose weight will gradually regain what they've lost within a year of dieting. Within a year of dieting, they'll gain what they lost. I mean, that's just crazy, but I know none of you want to be part of that percentage, which is why I'm hopefully just reiterating why, at the end of the day, it's okay to have slow progress because we all signed up to change our life. You guys all signed up to change your life in your own unique way. And with that said, we don't only want to see that lifestyle change for 12 weeks or 6 months or however long you're on the program. Our goal here is to help you reach your goal, create that lifestyle change, and make that stick forever. So we want you to not only be able to, get to your end goal, but we want you to be able to sustain that change. And with all that said, I think my whole point of doing this live is I think that we can all make a real change through effective and realistic goal setting. And I think part of the problem with, getting frustrated, maybe not zooming out and seeing the bigger picture, is that we're not necessarily creating the most realistic goals for ourselves, maybe for where we are right now. But so we've all probably heard of SMART goal, right? I know I've heard it in grade school. Maybe some businesses and companies use it today, but I wanted to personalize that a little bit today for you guys and the team, and present to you the acronym Team WAG. Team WAG goals. Super creative, I know. So I'm super excited to be sharing it with you guys, because I think it can I hope it's going to help a lot of you either reassess your goal, help you create new ones, and just use it as a model and mold to set realistic goals and expectations while in the program. So I'm just going to go through and tell you what each letter stands for first, just so that you're in the loop. But I will post all of this in the note or in the comments after I'm done, so you guys won't have to memorize it or take notes or anything. So T is going to be thorough, E is going to be execute, A, adherence, M, measurable, W, willingness, A, assessment, and G, growth or growth mindset. I like growth mindset, but I know there's not a M at the end. Okay, so thorough. So what I have here is that we want goals to be thorough and comprehensive, that are essentially just a little bit more specific, and we want them to be a little bit more in detail, because we really want to lay out what needs to be executed for successful achievement of your goal. So being specific is key. We can't say that we just want to, lose 20 pounds or X amount of pounds, and then lose sight of what it takes to actually lose those 20 pounds. That's kind of like saying, like, hey, I want to get stronger, but I'm not on a strength training program. I'm not on any program. So we need to really be specific and target those things that we're actually trying to work for. So more so, we should state what losing 20 pounds entails, right? Like, what are some actionable steps we need to take in order to get there? So maybe for some people, this might mean I need to make time and plan, these meals for myself so I'm able to hit my macros. I need to commit to training X amount of times per week, sleeping X amount of hours per night, working on my water intake, setting aside 2 days to grocery shop, make sure I have food on hand so I'm not left with nothing in the house. Those little details and specific things that you can lay out for yourself are really going to make a difference. So execute. Execution is going to be key, obviously. We can't get to a goal without actually following through. So writing a goal and putting all of those pieces together is only half of the battle. You actually have to carry out the plan and commit to the process and commit to being consistent. So some things that you can think about while breaking this down: what actions should you consider today to get close to your goal? What about tomorrow? What about this week, this month? That type of thing. And kind of relating back to the thorough bullet point I was just talking about, we need to use those specific actionable steps to follow through with them, because without follow through, we're not actually committing to the process. So that's just something to lay out for yourself and think about what it's going to really take to execute. So moving on to adherence. This is huge. I'm sure you all have heard your coach talk about adherence and consistency, right? Because that's essentially what we need to be doing to follow the program. The definition of adherence, I'm just going to lay it out for you guys, is the quality of adhering, steady devotion, support, allegiance, or attachment. And like I said, this word is absolutely key to setting and both reaching your desired goal. But essentially what this really means is that we have to be sticking to something or being faithful to something. And in most of our cases, it's tracking. Obviously, you know, sticking to our micro goals is important too, but we are essentially just focused on sticking to tracking our macros. And if adherence is lacking and we're not following through, again, the follow through, our progress is going to suffer, which is okay. And it's okay to make mistakes. Obviously, we've all been there, and like your coach is going to understand if, you know, you fall off, if you struggle. It's all part of learning and growing. But with that said, we can't get frustrated when the level of adherence that we're demonstrating is not where we need it to be to see those results. And piggybacking off of that, I also wanted to just throw this out there because when we're talking about new clients and adherence, both simultaneously, we tend to see people struggle a little bit more if it's completely new to them. So we need to consider, or I guess take into account the learning curve that it takes to be factored in. Obviously depending on the person, but within the first few weeks or even month or more than a month, depending on, you know, how quickly you get the hang of it. If you're new to tracking, it's going to be a little bit harder. You're going to see a little bit more, you're going to see a little bit less adherence in the beginning, assuming you're not just a natural pro. But if you're not new to tracking, you might have a little bit of a competitive edge towards the beginning of the program because, you know, you're not necessarily new. But again, just something to keep in mind for you newer clients. Adherence might be a bit up and down when you're coming into the program. And that's okay because, you know, it's all part of the learning curve. But again, we don't want to see frustration when we're still trying to get the hang of things. Moving on to measurable. So our goals can be both subjectively and objectively measured. And obviously we're looking at a handful of different things each week. Seismic lays that out for you guys, you know, when you're filling out your mood, your sleep, stress, all of that good stuff. So we're not emphasizing just one important data point here. We're relying on many data points. For example, just because we're weighing in doesn't mean that our weight and our weight trends are the end be all. And this is usually when I like to tell my clients to zoom out because we have to look at the bigger picture. And obviously, like I was talking about in the beginning, sustainable results are going to be key here. We want for you to be able to sustain your change and change your life for good over time. So I'm just gonna go over some things that you guys probably already know based on what your coach is telling you and measuring, but these are just some of the measurable items that we can focus on when establishing goals and just making sure that everything is kind of, you know, piecing together. So starting off, consistency, accuracy, estimations, the effort you're putting in, water intake, activity level, your relationship with food, any improvements that you might see there, sleep, stress, micronutrient intake, maybe, you know, as the holidays come up, navigating holidays and events, training adherence and intensity. The list could honestly go on and on. I'm sure you guys could compile a ton of things that you're looking at. But again, there are a number of things that we are measuring here. And like I said earlier, we don't just sign up and instantly see that weight loss. It takes time, it takes patience, you know, diligence week after week, and in making sure that there are so many things in line first. Because if, you know, water intake is really low, if maybe we're not training, if we're sleeping 4 hours a night, like those things all are going to take a huge toll on getting from point A to B. So again, there are so many things that are taken into account. And before getting hung up on, you know, one biofeedback point, for example, the scale, we have to look at things in a more realistic fashion, meaning we can't really expect our body to produce unrealistic results in maybe a short amount of time. We can't expect it to perform like a robot or perform perfectly. So I just really want to encourage you guys to don't forget to look outside the box. Focus on all of the other things that we're measuring too, because we have so many things in our toolbox that are defining our success that it's just not fair to rely on that one or two things. So W, we have willingness. So you have to set a goal that can align with an action plan that you are willing to carry out. And most importantly, we all have to be willing to sacrifice certain parts of our current lifestyle to reach whatever the goal is that we're working towards. So some things to think about. Again, this is mostly pertaining to nutrition, maybe training, lifestyle. So what skills you're going to need to learn. If you're new to tracking, this could be efficiently tracking your macros, hitting your macros within the plus or minus targets. For some OGs, maybe it's, just upping the ante with your veggie intake and like trying new things, creating new crazy recipes, maybe intuitive eating, being more flexible with your intake and not being as rigid. What lifestyle changes you'll need to make. So maybe that means focusing more on your sleep, some changes to manage stress better, things like that. And another thing to think about, what will it cost in terms of quality of life? So maybe you have like this huge goal that maybe you're not willing to sacrifice those nights out for, or meals out with family and friends, things like that to consider. So as far as sacrifices go, for some people, a sacrifice might be limiting eating out to 1 or 2 times per week, maybe cutting back alcohol intake, controlling the majority of your food and getting comfortable in the kitchen, being willing to stand up for something that you do not want if you're out to eat or something. We've all been in those situations where people are like, oh, just this one piece of pizza, just this one bite, just one drink, it won't hurt you. Like, if we don't want something, we got to be willing to say no. And that that falls under the sacrifice and willingness category, if you're willing to really follow through with those things. So with that, something else to ask yourself is, does your commitment level match your adherence? Or vice versa, you can do a little integrity check there. Does your adherence match your commitment level? And again, this could go both ways depending on what side you're on. But bottom line is that if you aren't sure you are committed enough to follow through on a specific goal or changing a specific, section of your life, then it might not be realistic for you, at least now, to follow through with that goal. And then this brings me to my next point. I was going to say we can reassess, but it doesn't mean it'll never be something that you can achieve. And that's okay to reassess your parameters, but there's always that option to revise your goal and create a new one that you're more capable to commit to right now with the sacrifices you're willing to make. So assessment, this kind of goes back to willingness and can relate on that level, but we have to constantly assess the effectiveness of our plan. We have to constantly assess our efforts. We have to assess our lifestyle, any relevant data that really is going to pertain to, reaching our end goal. So what I usually recommend with this kind of thing is to zoom out and do an integrity check. And if you're my client, you've certainly heard me say this before. So what I mean by integrity check is to zoom way out, look at your goals, look at your adherence, your commitment, etc., all at a bird's eye view. And it's basically just looking at all these areas, maybe areas you're not doing so well. Maybe there are areas that you're crushing and, you want to assess how you're doing. Maybe look at how accurate and consistent you've been. Maybe you have some things you want to improve on or fine tune. Usually at glance, I tend, even when I do this with myself, I'm looking at, either my logs or how I'm eating, and I'm like, yeah, I'm crushing it. I don't need to change a thing. But then I'm like, all right, let's be real. Let's really look into this. And most always we can realize, that, hey, maybe there's some things we need to work on, or maybe, I can fine tune some things here. But it's going back to also realizing that we're all work in progress, no matter what our goals are. There's always something to work on, and that's okay to be a work in progress and, to not reach your goal yet. But yeah, the cool thing about that is that zooming out usually always allows us to kind of see the bigger picture and assess what isn't working, what might be working, what we might want to change in our behaviors and maybe the methods that we're using. But we can always recalibrate. And that's the cool thing about having just like a ever growing goal. Like, we can always choose to reassess and reevaluate to improve our plan and put a new plan in place. Easy as that. So lastly, I have growth mindset. And with this, I just really, really want to emphasize to everyone, no matter how long you've been on the program, progress is still progress. And no matter what area you are making progress in, like, that is still something to be hugely proud of. And again, this goes back to, like, if we're only looking at the scale, we're not going to see all of those other amazing things that might be happening, or all of the things that, like, you might be improving on that we're just ignoring because we're so hyper focused on one thing or just a number. And I know you all may have seen Adi's post earlier this week about, she addressed some amazing things for us to kind of focus on to adapt a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. So, for example, maybe we hadn't seen as much progress as we'd wanted in X amount of weeks. But again, with the growth mindset versus fixed, we can switch that around to, but what did you accomplish during those 12 weeks? Like, what are all of the things that you did do, instead of, maybe the couple things that didn't happen? And this could go for any moment in time in your journey. If you're maybe feeling frustrated or unworthy or just kind of in the dark, you can, again, zoom out, take a step back, look at all the other markers of progress which are inside your control, and you can mostly always find an improvement. I mean, like I said, there are so many things to look at. Like, we have, maybe changes in mindset, improved habits when it comes to eating out, your relationship with food quality, activity level, micronutrient intake, consistency, training. There are so many things that are considered progress in our body. Is not just a growing list of self-improvements, nor are we a slave to the number on the scale. Again, there are so many other things to look at. So you really I just really want you all to kind of channel that growth side of your brain. It's really important too, is avoiding negativity, because I know that it's so hard to not pick apart our bodies and our progress, because we're so eager to actually see that change. But most importantly, we have to avoid comparison. If you guys saw my post earlier this week, it's the thief of joy. Avoid only focusing on one thing, especially the number on the scale. And never forget where you started, or your starting point, because that is the only thing that you really need to compare to, because there are almost always improvements to be found from your starting point, where you were, to where you are now. And I think that's really beautiful for everyone to keep their eyes on, because we're allowed to be a work in progress, and we're allowed to continue working on ourselves. And that is really all I have for you guys. And I hope you loved it. So again, I'm going to post the Team WAG acronym in the comments. I'm going to take out all of my notes and just kind of give you guys a brief, just summary of each thing. And if you guys have any questions, fire away, and I will do my best to answer them whenever they come in. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. Happy Friday, and I look forward to doing this again soon, guys. Have a good one.